On behalf of the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences, I really appreciate your coming this morning, and hopefully you've enjoyed the program and you'll enjoy the lunch as well. As Joseph mentioned, I'm Tom Thompson. I'm Associate Dean and Director of CALS Global within the College of Ag and Life Sciences at Virginia Tech. Before I took on this role 5 years ago, I was I was department head of crop and soil environmental sciences at Virginia Tech, which actually made me Carl Griffey's boss. Now, if you know Carl, you know that he doesn't need a boss, and he's one of those people that if your supervisor makes your life really rewarding. And so I'm really pleased to have this opportunity on behalf of my colleagues and our partners and friends of the College of Ag and Life Sciences. It's my pleasure to take a few moments to honor Dr. Griffey, and we're so glad that he could be with us this morning. Carl is well known to most of you, and he was recently, just a few months ago, inducted into the Hall of Fame of the College of Ag and Life Sciences at Virginia Tech. And that's a big deal. And so we wanted to, I don't have a trophy, Carl, sorry about that, but you just have to carry it home if I did. But I do want to honor him today in a similar way that we honored him at the college in Blacksburg just a few months ago. And many of us, I know, have attended this field day for years to learn about the latest advances in wheat and barley breeding from Carl and others who worked in his program. Carl has an extensive list of awards and outputs from his career, but it was never the numbers that drove Carl. It was his desire to serve agriculture. He dedicated his entire career to the betterment of wheat and barley production. He was so successful because he worked hard, but even more so because he truly listened to what farmers, millers, and end users wanted and needed, and he worked hard to deliver those traits in the varieties that came out of his program. You know, I've been a professor for 31 years at 3 different universities, and I've never known anyone who worked harder at his craft than Carl Griffey. Carl's program released over 100 wheat and barley cultivars during his career. An average plant breeder, and Carl is not an average plant breeder, would be considered successful with maybe 1/3 of that output. Carl's resume lists more than $12 million in royalties collected from seed sales of his releases, but the impact is actually much larger than that. Calculations performed a couple of years ago by the Department of Agricultural and Applied Economics at Virginia Tech showed that the small grains breeding program that Carl led has generated benefits in excess of $119 million from 2000 to 2018. And that doesn't count the contribution from 21 wheat and 5 barley cultivars released prior to 2000. These are amazing contributions, but Carl's reach wasn't just through the varieties that came from his program. He mentored nearly 50 graduate students during his career at Virginia Tech. Carl was a demanding boss, and he asked a lot of his students, but he also took each of them through the entire breeding process. Everyone knew that his students understood the process of plant breeding from the lab to the greenhouse to the field, and Carl was not a remote boss and supervisor and mentor. He was always there with his students. Carl did not have a formal extension appointment when he was employed by Virginia Tech, but as many of you know, he's been a well-known speaker at field days and statewide meetings, and as a frequent co-author on extension publications. Carl has always been willing to engage with stakeholders at all levels: farmers, agency personnel, buyers, and others. This level of engagement and listening served him well over the years as he prioritized activities that would occur in his program. I'd like to draw your attention to a few statements of support for Carl and his work. Bob Pittman, a former superintendent of the Eastern Virginia AREC, said that Carl epitomizes the Virginia Tech motto, Ut Prosim, in his service to the university, his numerous graduate students, and to agriculture in Virginia and across much of the United States. Don Mannell, the chairman emeritus of Mannell Milling, said, quite simply, Carl built and developed the premier public soft wheat breeding program in the eastern United States. Charles Green, deputy commissioner of VDACS, said, Dr. Griffey's prestigious reputation and the impact of his work has helped to attract investment from private industry into Virginia's agribusiness sector and has been a highlight when VDACS promotes Virginia grain products in the global marketplace. And that's only a few of the many expressions of support for Carl. You'd be hard-pressed, I think, to name another individual who has done more for row crop agriculture in Virginia and in the Mid-Atlantic region than Carl. And it was very fitting that he was recently inducted into the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences Hall of Fame, and that he received thanks and honor from this group. Thank you for everything, Carl.
That was a very nice speech. Thank you. I appreciate it very much. So, as most of you may know, I actually grew up on a farm, and so I know hard work. I actually discovered in an old house on my farm 11 mule plows. So I know I didn't work as hard as my grandfather did, but I've always believed in working hard, and I've believed in doing something. If a job's worth doing, it's worth doing right. Otherwise, don't bother with it. So I've always appreciated farming. Farmers, I know how hard a life farmers have, and I know what the margins are, and so I probably said it several times, my boss was the farmers and the seedsmen. My boss was not the administrators at Virginia Tech. So I think Tom knew me pretty well. So basically, in this life, it's what you give back. It's not what you earn or what you accumulate or what you make. So just keep that in mind, and hopefully everybody can try to give back to society as well. And so also I should say that I am not a one-man show, and I've had a lot of support from this experiment station, from the folks at Blacksburg who work on my crew. No one would disagree that Carl is a hard taskmaster, but I never expected anything of anybody that I wouldn't do myself. And I think that's also a good rule, that if you're not willing to do it yourself, then don't ask somebody else to do it. So I think that's all I have to say. If anybody wants to ask any questions, I can try to answer them. But thank you for your support. I really wish that I would have had a retirement field day the year that I retired, because we had a lot to show, all the older varieties we had, and I'd hoped that everybody could be here to see those old varieties. But I'm glad we had this chance today. And by the way, I am enjoying retirement very much. I inherited my mother's love of flower gardening, so I have lots of flower beds around my house. So that keeps me busy, and also I have yard and pasture around my house to mow. I have lots of wildlife. Deer, which I've had to put up numerous electric fences to keep them out of my plants. I have wild turkeys that'll come almost right up to me. Lots of nice wildlife. So I'm enjoying retirement, and thank you very much for your comments, Tom, and everybody else. And I don't want to stand in the way of lunch.